I was eating dinner at a restaurant one evening and noticed a family of 4 sitting at the table next to mine. Now, the children both appeared to be under about 10, and all family members sat there silently staring at their own smartphone devices. I don't believe anyone said more than just a few words the entire evening that I was sitting there. My next guests say that we are living in a tech information world and are becoming mentally obese. What they mean is that we are constantly taking in information and not all of it healthy, and we're not finding a balance for healthier digital diet. David Ryan Polgar is a writer, attorney, and college professor at Lincoln College of New England. He has been featured on MSN, Fox News, and recently delivered a TEDx talk on mental obesity. David is the author of the soon-to-be-released book, Wisdom in the Age of Twitter. Also with me is Dr. David Greenfield, founder of the Center for Internet and Technology Addiction, and considered one of the world's leading authorities on internet and computer behavior and digital media technology. He's the author and producer of the DVD Raising Generation D, What Parents Need to Know About Tweens and Teens Digital Devices. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
This is always an issue for me because I think, from what in my experience with parents, the 2 things that I see are an issue is parents are either overwhelmed with not only their own lives, but trying to figure out how to manage this stuff, so they kind of give up and throw the towel in. And then we've also got parents who I think suffer from sort of a variation of the halo effect, thinking my kids wouldn't do anything I wouldn't want them to do.
Well,
so
you
I don't
also assume
have
that
to
all
worry.
technology is good technology. And like you said with that starting story, that's not a rare anomaly. That's actually becoming kind of the norm.
Which is? What is the norm?
Well, where you see this family of 4 all surrounded
right.
by technology.
But also the idea that technology is, we have this idea that there's an educational or productive nature to technology, and that valence persisted for years and years and years. And the truth is that technology is amoral, and what happens is it will eat time and space unless parents or the people that are using the technology set those limits.
And I think the other thing that I know there's a force of parents out there who really are becoming vigilant to make sure that they want their kids monitored. But the problem is schools are now expecting parents to get these smart devices for their kids, and then the parents feel like, oh, well, if the school needs it, then there's nothing I can do about it, right?
Most school districts are doing the BYOD, bring your own device policy. So one of the things that they're talking about is kind of, they call it the flipped classroom, where they're really going to have potentially heavy tech inside the classroom, but then to find that balance, you're really going to need parents who are going to strike some type of balance with their children outside of the home, to have moments of unplugging.
And the other issue that's created is it's created this generational reversal where the children have a greater knowledge base for the first time in history about a technology or knowledge area than their parents. So it switches that power structure within the family. So kids know things that the parents don't. The parents feel helpless in terms of knowing how to use the technology, let alone setting limits about it. And this destroys and changes that power balance in the family.
And you hear parents saying things like, well, I don't know how this device works, and they give it to each other. Here, you figure it out.
Right, absolutely.
And also by the time the parents usually figure out the certain technology or a certain social network, that's already been moved on with the kids. They already find that passé. So, a parent might say, okay, I figured out Facebook, I figured out Twitter, and now kids are saying, well, I'm on to Snapchat or other types of social media.
Right.
And I think one of the worst things that happens is that the kids have multiple IDs, and they have the one the parents think they're checking or friends with, and then they have the other identifications that the parents don't know about, whether it's Facebook or Snapchat or whatever.
Right. And they're also managing multiple devices. Initially, when the internet started to really heat up, people thought television viewing would drop, and in fact, that's not happened. It's actually gone up. But what's happening is the kids are using 3, 4, 5 devices at the same time, and they're monitoring simultaneously all those channels, not in an effective way because there is no such thing as multitasking, but in the sense that they're jumping from one medium to another, and they're prolonging the amount of time it takes them to get their homework done or to do other activities.
Can I make a guess that, and I've got a background in clinical psychology, but can I guess that the addiction, part of that addiction is because when we're checking a device and we're looking for good stuff, information from somebody or opportunities that it just in the brain, it creates the drive to want more of that.
That's
right?
exactly that is the reason why it's addictive. What happens is every time you get a hit, and a hit could be a tweet or an email or a text or a piece of information that you like, you get a dopamine surge. And then it gets classically conditioned with the buzz or the beep that comes through your cell phone, and then you decide to check it, and then if you get that positive hit, you're more likely to, and it follows a variable ratio reinforcement schedule. In other words, these devices are the world's largest slot machines.
So let's take a few minutes. Would you talk about, and either one can start, your work? Why you're here and why we're talking about this.
A lot of what we're doing right now is kind of teaming up on a project called Overplugged, really where we're looking at it kind of from a holistic standpoint to say, how can we, as parents right now strike a balance? Because one of the things that we always do is we think it's solely to do with discipline or willpower, and that's what we're finding, as Dr. Greenfield will kind of attest to, that is going to have a limited impact. You really need to change your lifestyle, and that's a lot of what we're discussing.
And integrate that change into the family structure. And this is nothing new. Families have struggled with other issues like exercise and diet and nutrition. And David's analogy of likening it to managing the way you would consume calories is a good one, in the sense that you do have to manage, you have a certain amount of time, and how to spend that time both digitally and non-digitally is the issue that most parents have to struggle with. But again, the parents have to be educated, because if they're afraid of the technology, they're not going to go near it.
And you're right, because if there's the black cloud, well, I don't know how it works. I don't know. It's just they don't have enough I don't think stamina or strength in their self to be able to say, okay, let's figure out how this works, because they're so overwhelmed with work, they're overwhelmed with their lives.
That's right.
They just can't. I just can't take on something else trying to figure this out.
Right. So we have in our clinic, we have a person that's dedicated to doing all the IT work for us. So we send him into the people's homes. We set up monitoring systems, blocking and filtering systems, both on the devices and on the parents' routers, so we can actually monitor, limit, and change access for the child's use of the technology.
Does that mean, and do you think there's going to be an increase in the amount of controls for parents on the at the router level?
I think that's the only place to control it.
We can't control devices there yet, but you're saying we may be able to?
Well, you can control the devices at the device level, but you can control access point where the devices are allowed to go to at the router level, and you can set the newer routers to allow certain time frames and certain amounts of time, certain bandwidth and certain pass-through for each device. You can actually target the devices, so if someone is 15 years old, you can give them a little more screen time than someone who is 10 years old.
And I think outside of even the kind of blocking software, you still have kind of the parental role about how are they dealing with their child or children in tech usage. I know the other day, speaking to a parent who said, well, my 5-year-old has an iPad. Do you think it's okay if I have some level of control, if I take it away from her? And this is what the kind of sea change that you've seen over the years is not maybe realizing that a 5-year-old's not going to have the same level of autonomy that I would have.
Yeah,
right?
did you see the story of the kid who was being given the iPad from the beginning of birth, and then they took it away and they gave the kid a magazine, and he started tapping on the magazine, thinking that because that's the way their brain is processing information.
In the work that I do, because I teach parenting classes, I do parent coaching, and I speak on stages, just at parent conferences, as teachers conferences, I'm always saying, you know what, we still maintain the right. I believe that a lot of these devices, if you don't know how they work, then the child should be signing them in and out. Signing them back in during homework time, back out for a little while, and then a little bit before bed, signing them back out,
What is interesting that again, as you referred to with the halo effect, how do we see somebody utilizing it? If a few years ago you saw a child who was sitting at poltergeist style, the TV for 6 hours, you would say, my God, that kid needs to go outside. But now, with that halo effect, you're kind of allowed this concept of, well, maybe they're doing their homework. Maybe they're doing something educational.
That's the biggest issue that we come into when they come into our treatment programs that we've set up. The kids are not stupid. What they say to the parents, I'm doing my homework. And of course, they know how to toggle back and forth. And the parents don't want to say, oh, Johnny is going to fall behind the rest of the class because we're not giving him enough internet access to do his homework. But the research shows that 80% of the amount of time that people spend on these digital devices is not work or schoolwork related.
You're right, and the parents set the example, like you mentioned before. They've got to do a better job of managing that. I had one parent say, "Well, you know what? He likes to read, and we don't want to stop him from reading." And I said, "Well, you can still download a book and then disable the internet and have the reader be not connected to the internet, but have the book on there."
They could actually give him a real book.
Or give him a real book, right?
Well, that's really, I think, what you're seeing is this idea that if left to our own devices, pun intended, we're constantly going to be consuming. So really what you're saying is, again, get rid of this idea of willpower and actually prevent yourself. Occasionally, go out to the beach once in a while.
And there is no
read a book.
willpower, because one thing we found from our original research that I did with ABC News years ago was that 90% of plus people that use the internet cannot accurately track the amount of time that they spend on the device. So they experience a sense of dissociation. So even if Johnny says he's gonna get off, he doesn't know how long he's been on or how long he's going to be on.
Right. Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to dive into the whole shadow of the internet, because now we talk about the tech devices. Let's get into some risks that I think are really big with our kids. So stay with me.
Thank you.
We can't ignore the fact that our children are living a digital age, but that doesn't mean we should be allowing them to be constantly attached to a digital or internet-enabled device. There are some very serious risks to allowing our children to be connected to that internet unsupervised and unmonitored. Now, coming up after the break, my guests and I are going to discuss the shadow side of the internet. We'll be right back, so don't go away.